What is up, freaks, freakettes, and freakazoids? It's Scott hauling you back in for one more lap around the track on Stemming the Tide. One more swing at bat. One more shitty intro. We're back, baby. This is this is the behind the scenes of book number 3, Eyes of Empty Death by Stephen Radney-MacFarland.
On the birth certificate.
Stephen did not personally approve that intro, just so you know.
He loves it. And maybe it's Stefan. I don't know. But shout out to you. Either way, great book. Okay. So we got the whole crew here. And just like the last couple episodes, we're going to be getting into some questions of Freeman, the Barn. Really break him down.
Barn Master.
Without any further ado, this is going to cover episodes 106, The Nature of Vermin, until episode 160, Tide Stemmed. As of this point, unreleased. But you've heard it, I hope.
It'd be awfully weird if you were here behind the scenes and I hadn't finished the show yet.
That's right.
But if you did do that, let us know how it turns out. Honestly.
I mean, here's your spoiler warning.
You might get more out of it.
Yeah, we could skip at recording a lot of episodes if we could just
just straight to the behind the scenes.
Just what would you like to have happened or not happened?
What are you, Marvel?
It's very nice to hear everyone's voice today. I'm going to say that right off the bat.
Oh,
very nice. So, speaking of nice things, Freeman, let's start with some nice, easy lob questions for you here. You can bat them out of the park. Are there any standout combats that did not go the way you thought they would, be it in the player's favor or not?
I mean, the rolling combat, the famous rolling encounter in the farm level always comes to mind. And that was, when you were fighting the Nihilith, which rolled into the Dracothics fungus thing, which rolled into dragon's blood puffballs, and then the Goliath spider. I didn't expect that to go that way because, well, one, it happened because I used the blink spell with the Nihilith wrong, and I was using it to escape instead of rolling for random directions. But I regret nothing, of course. It was awesome. And that fight, the image of Nick expanded to a huge creature going toe to toe with the Goliath spider, and then going down in the massive cavern, like that image, and all the drow like just running around nibbling at the spider's legs as best they can, like that image is like rent free in my brain space for sure.
So how did you think that fight was going to go? We were just going to deal with the Nihilith room first.
Yeah, I mean, there was no plan for a rolling combat, that's for sure. But once I decided to make the Nihilith run, I knew it was going to head towards the Dracothics and try and activate it. Not on purpose per se, but like I was kind of doing that. I was like, let's have him go this way, activate that thing. It's a nice, just trying to escape and get lost in the mushrooms. And I knew I was going to make the Dracothics and the other creatures like kind of target indiscriminately to make that sort of less. I mean, it was going to be more wild and more chaotic, but less of a focused in on killing the characters kind of event. The part that I really didn't expect to happen was for Nick to become huge, and then because he was huge, he stepped into the spider's web. So it was like that. It was literally the size of the character that caused the rolling encounter to really become something quite massive.
Right, the old Leroy Jenkins effect.
Yeah, something like that.
Love that. Okay, what was your favorite faction or NPC in the late game?
Faction wise, I don't know. I think the drow are really cool in this adventure. I think they're a neat like additive to the adventure. There's not like a super amount of depth there per se, but I like that they had a history with Belcora, and that was like that history is kind of lost over time, but they found themselves roped back in. But they weren't like a classic trope of drow like you'd see from D&D or even Pathfinder 1E. They were like lawful neutral in alignment. They're kind of bored frontier scouts and soldiers. They're not like, chaotic, evil dark elves. They aren't, hyper vigilant soldiers that are trying to expand a territory or anything like that. They just kind of live in their post and their space, and they're kind of a little more down to earth, and they follow by their rules. But, you know, I kind of liked that borderline relaxed attitude they had, despite following all their military like stuff and not really trusting you at the gate. I think it was a cool, the drow kind of existing there, being at a somewhat of a stalemate with the spider and the Urdafon. I think it was a nice touch to like really punctuate the fact that you're getting deeper and deeper and getting closer and closer to the Darklands. I think that just as a faction that did that. I think that's pretty cool. Single NPC, I don't really know. There wasn't a lot of super cool single NPCs in the third book, I think. If I had to pick one, it'd just be Augrael, who just persisted through, you know.
Favorite NPC of all time or what?
Between Augrael and Morlabent, I think.
Let me go back to the Dark Elves for 1 second here. I feel like there was a lot of confusion around the size and purpose of Ildaris. From outpost to frontier town to trade city to like, I think everyone had a different idea of what it was. And right. you had to spend some time in reining us all back in and kind of getting us.
I had to remind you all that it was an outpost. Yeah, not. I think I specifically remember James. I think twice. You know, looking forward to like a metropolis of some kind. I was like, no, I've never said it's a city. You know.
Oh yeah, that may have been the image I was portraying, but I was really thinking like a Wild West city. Like there would be trade that went through it, that kind of thing. But I never thought it was going to be like a metropolis. I just thought it was going to be, you know, a couple of buildings. But I thought there was going to be an opportunity for gear and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, it was much tighter than that. Yeah, it was certainly not a trade spot. Yeah,
and I was with James on that, where I was almost picturing like it. Basically, Wild West does work with this because I was picturing like a Star Wars, like outer rim fucking planet, you know, which basically is like the Wild West but with aliens. Yeah. If we had a Darklands book yet, even still, I might have been able to play with that more and like provide more Darklands trade. I think it would be cool, like have their caravan going back to the actual city, Lizardin or whatever, and then you could order goods like you do at Atari to Absalom. I would have made that happen if I could, but like, you know, otherwise you're just sort of looking at the same stuff. So it wasn't really an interesting thing to add in. Yeah. Okay. Moving on here. From the players, any fights you knew within seconds that you had to nerf?
No, not really. I didn't do a lot of nerfing on the fly. I didn't do a lot of combat changes on the fly in general. There's a couple things, but like unless you count like the drow actually coming to aid in that rolling encounter, but that wasn't like a decision made to nerf the fight because I was afraid of a TPK. It was like a story reason. You know, the drow were watching and they couldn't pass up the opportunity of taking down the spider that they've all been like keeping an eye on and hoping to defeat.
They wanted the kill. Yeah,
they wanted the kill, and they had an opening, so they took it, you know, and they lost some good people in the way, but yeah, it wasn't in any effort to nerf the battle or anything like that.
That was kind of a funny twist. Now that you bring that up, just like we didn't really give a shit about the fact that they wanted the trophy. We're just like, yeah, go ahead, and they were so stoked, and that just kind of gives it like it gives the adventure some depth in that. The people around you have their own storyline going on. They have their own wants and wishes in the world, and they had nothing to do with us.
Yeah, they were bored. They wanted the trophy. They wanted to report back. They wanted reward. You know, they really were just bored scouts and soldiers, willing to risk it all. But yeah, if we want to talk about encounters though that were nerfed within a few seconds, I think Cam is the one who knows which encounter needed nerfing in seconds and pulled it off.
Yeah. There was a couple that you put elite templates on. I'm not going to call you out, but I'm pretty sure because I can do math.
Call them out. The listeners want to hear.
It made sense because there were a lot of fights that would have, if he hadn't, they would have been more trivial. I'm trying to think of which fight exactly that he nerfed immediately.
That you nerfed immediately? Yeah, no, I'm talking about what you nerfed. Like, you saw it had to be nerfed and you did
Oh,
it.
yeah. There were several that I was just, oh, God. Spell, go, now.
The Golem and the Volok encounter.
Yeah.
Like, you just like,
Stonewall.
wall up.
Nope. Fuck
Yeah,
off.
you're like, okay, nerfed immediately. Like, there was nothing I could do. Literally no, like, direct attacking spells on Volok's list. No melee attack that can punch the wall. Like, Stat Block was not built to get through that at all. It was too good.
You also critically failed on a lot of my saves. Like, it was
Yeah, that's
unreal.
true.
There was at least 2 big ones that I was like, oh my God.
It might be worth noting that I did, like, it's not nerfing within seconds, but I did change a few encounters along the way. We'll talk about that, like, throughout this whole episode. But something that comes to mind is you all remember the wisp, the 4 wisps.
Oh, yeah. They were just beating the shit out of us.
Yeah, and it was just such a slog to fight them because I realized they could just be invisible and hit you and move around, and there was like almost nothing you could do. What was that? I think someone managed to grab a hold of one, and everyone just started pounding on that. So I kind of nerfed that fight in the sense that once you killed one, that's when I ended the fight. You know, because it was painful to go through that encounter. That of course also ended with Belcora breaking Kruka's mind, so that made it a little bit better.
Better?
Depends on who you ask, I guess. It was certainly a better ending to the episode. Because of that encounter, though, the 4 wisps being so painful, I basically removed a few other wisp encounters. There was like a 2 wisp dread wisp encounter around the corner, you know, from that encounter, like really a short way away that I totally skipped. There was another 2 in the temple area before you go downstairs to the temple proper. There was another 2 dread wisps to fight there. I just removed that. I kind of had them appear in the basins, if you might remember, and then kind of float around and create light, but I never intended for you to fight them because I knew how boring it was. And then when you got to the room with the after the glass golems, and I reused Sequishu, did a throwback to the episode 100 wisp creature. You were, of course, possibly meant to fight them there, but I purposely turned that into a social encounter to avoid that kind of idea.
And I almost turned it into a fight again at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. And technically, if you get into that room by the book, they encourage you to smash the sort of soul orbs, the glass orbs in the previous room if you hadn't already, and they want you to smash them in that room. And if you do, it actually frees them from the room. They don't tell you they're trapped there. And then if you do that, they disappear, but they come back in the fight with Belcora. So that was a big change that I made because I did not want you fighting 3 to 4 dread wisps in the middle of that Belcora fight. I think we all would have hated that.
Yeah, it'd be weak as hell.
So that doesn't really count as a nerf per se. Certainly removals and changes for the sake of more interesting combats, but yeah.
Can we circle back to Kruka?
Yeah, why not?
Well, was that something that's in the book, Breaking of the Mind? Because it didn't seem like there was any easy way for us to counteract that.
So a very good question. There is a thing in the book where Belcora is slowly growing in power, and when it comes to book 3, she technically has access to the 3 levels in that book, but she has to like push herself once a day, basically. That's why she was kind of able to do show up a couple different times. The first time you really saw her when she grabbed Otari and did the whole thing on the 4th level, that was me, you know, giving her a big push for story's sake and a cool scene. But generally speaking, she couldn't really reach very far from the bottom. But yeah, she's meant to show up like a few times. I didn't really use her as much as I could have. She's meant to show up and she's meant to observe your actions, test you out, see what abilities you use, and then plan accordingly. And I use the wisps a little bit to watch you and report back in that way. As opposed to bringing her in. But yeah, she's supposed to come up, sometimes attack. She's supposed to start with like a couple of melee swings or something like that, and then retreat, and then maybe come back and do something else, and maybe come back and actually blast a spell at you. So it is part of the adventure. It's the natural one that really screwed Kruka on that one.
So that wasn't pre-written between you and Dunk or anything like that. That was not writing a character out. That was just luck of the dice.
No. If I remember correctly, Krucka was the one that was beating that one wisp like really hard. I think it was Lump who had it held, but Krucka was really dealing the damage out, and that's why she targeted him, because that thing's dangerous. So let's see if we can put it down.
That was a moment that I was worried people wouldn't believe the role, but it was so fucking like so inopportune, and I had no idea, like as you were describing the effects of the spell, I had no idea how the sentence was going to end, and was just like, holy fuck at the end of it. Like, I just lost a character and I didn't even think that was going to happen.
But like not dead. It's such a crazy way to lose a character. Yeah. It was awesome.
All right. Moving along here. So kind of the opposite of what we just discussed. Are there any fights that stand out in your mind that you made more difficult in the moment?
Yeah, kind of like I said earlier, I never really did either one of those things, nerfing or increasing difficulty. So nothing really comes to mind. I found that along the way, mostly you trounced fights or were trounced because of circumstance. You had no problem running away. I mean, early days in book one, there was issues there a little bit where maybe I pulled my punches more. And there, and I said before, I think in the last episode, like moments like when Gilda dies, I let you run off instead of, chasing you down kind of thing. So those moments were more common than just nerfs or increases. I did increase the power of some fights in advance for sure. Like Cam said, there was definitely some elite templates in there somewhere. One that comes to mind is like when you first encounter the Caligni in the room where they're all like praying to the Chul eggs. You probably remember the Caligni in there that's got like no eyes and a big sword and heavy armor. Like that's not part of the adventure. I added that in for fun. Because I wanted that fight. If you did go in guns a-blazing, you all were pretty good at that. I wanted your victory to be a little bit regrettable. I wanted you to like really have to lick your wounds on that one. Because I wanted them to be desperate but powerful. And had you fought the Caligni down the floor below too, that would have been the case. They were pretty tough too.
Very interesting. So what you're saying is we kicked a lot more ass when there wasn't just 3 of us and Cam brought in their... I don't want to say munchkin, but I would say well-made,
well-built
PCs.
Cam's manifesto to the War Priest and how powerful it can be.
Yeah. Oh, Reddit says this is bad. I took that personally.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, well, it doesn't just end at Lump though, because I think all the characters that Cam built were very well made and synergized very well.
I love playing Phil. That's one of my favorite roles. What does the party need? Now be really good at it.
What was your favorite level on the Gauntlet and why?
That's a tough one. To me, it's like the prison level stands out. I know that James loved the prison level as well.
I loved the prison level.
I think the prison level is really cool. It also, like, the way it kind of coincided and came back with our episode 100 was really fun. I think, like I said before, I kind of regretted not really using Yasan Kalir very well in the whole Doriana story. So that's the one part of the prison level when you walk in the door and you discover this guy and then you just defeat him, felt like lackluster, but everything else felt like tense and interesting. And I kind of just love the idea of like, the original purpose of the prison level, is like to gather forces, but like also powerful monsters in those stasis chambers to shoot through the beam of the Gauntlet. I think that's a really cool, it's like a storage area for destruction in a weird way. And I think it's really cool to like have these devils kind of around for centuries still. There's this weird kind of level of strange intrigue to contracted devils just standing around thumbing their noses, just like, and how they're all still sort of calm. Some of them are losing their patience a little bit, but they're also just, this is their lot in life. This is what they do. And I thought it was a kind of really neat kind of idea to step into. That being said, the other one is, it's hard not to hate the very next level as well, because I really liked when you step into like the wilderness of the farm, and it's such a different change of pace all of a sudden from tight. You're going to like a wilderness-based part of the vaults all of a sudden instead of like these constructed vaults. And like there's that essence of like it wasn't just about the construction of different levels. It was all about sustainability of food and stuff as well, and like and finding Darklands monsters and luring them. So that sort of area of the adventure I think is really, really neat.
That's where Tulok died. That level's bullshit.
I did actually write a note for myself here. So it's also where I finally got to legitimately kill one of Scoot's characters in a very gruesome way. It's great.
Wow. Okay. Well, very happy about that. Can we just send this one around the table then? Because Cam got in there. Farm, your favorite, Cam?
Oh, it was the back-to-back prison farm. Those two levels were like some of my peak gaming moments. They're just playing these kind of games. It was just completely different vibes. Two of our arguably best fights in those two fights. It was just rough bamping through the wall of force and that rolling encounter that to me, even the Frog Hemoth fight.
The shit was intense. Yeah. And even just, when Belcor did show up and shoved someone off the edge. Was it Tulok maybe? And then rough like superhero diving into the pit. Like, it was awesome.
Yeah, that was very tight as well. Dunk, do you have a favorite level?
Well, I'm more of a people person, so I liked Otari.
Nice.
I do love Otari.
No, the farm was really, really fun. That rolling encounter was just a great time. So, but I did like some of the early ones, like the lab level where we were first starting to get like just a taste of the flavor of like how dark things were gonna get. I thought that was really fun on the first couple levels where it was like we weren't entirely sure what the fuck was down there.
Yeah, once you get into that arena, like you get a little bit of a taste of like the Grothla on like level 2, a gibbering Mather on level 3 kind of thing. But when you get to the arena / labs, like kind of 2 levels, that you really start to see the flesh warps come out, and it's like it gets creepy.
Yeah, like around the time where we brought back, what was the name of that little fucker? The doll that came to life, and we had to put out
Borbo?
his misery. Borbo, yeah. Like there's just like the kind of, there was a tortured quality to that in the areas around the where we found him that just kind of like started to instill a sense of dread that I thought was really, really fun flavor. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
James?
Definitely the prison for me. This is just all of my vibes. Devils, prison break, stasis chambers. Like this is it for me. This is peak Pathfinder, peak TTRPGs. There's that really dope bone dragon that just like exchanged wisdom with Krugga the whole time.
The Bone Devil.
The Bone Devil, yeah.
Yegin, yeah.
Yeah, it's where we met Yason Kalir with that weird hand crawling thing. It's where we met Lump. There's that sentry, like I don't even know how you would call it, like a security feature. Like I just find the whole level very visually pleasing, and it was just an interesting break from all that gray to just go to this like dark, putrid, like orange color. It's my vibe for sure.
You just love the little imp.
The imp, Jack. Yeah, Jack was great. The Bark-and-Buck was never meant to be anything significant until we wrote that in. That was cool. I love the witch warden, the witchfire warden. That is like that's the fiery thing that like was that was like the sentry around the stasis chambers. That was created by the death of a hag at Belcorra's hands. It's so cool, and it keeps coming back. Actually, you never lingered in there for very long after, so it never came back to get you. But you can fight it over and over, basically.
And Duncan stole my bit because I was going to say that my favorite level was the Gauntlet Ruins. Because I love Mifflets.
I knew that because I'm an empath.
Nice.
Oh, God. Oh.
Love it.
Oh, good. I did love the ruins, too. It was so fun.
I'm honestly just, I got to go with Cam on this one, that the back-to-back prison and then farm. It's like when I saw Kendrick Lamar back-to-back to Nine Inch Nails and just walked literally from one show ending to the other one. It just, it doesn't get better than that, you know?
Very different vibes, but the same level of just stoked energy. Yeah.
Just amazing. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Moving on to the new section. Ooh, you get to listen to me talk for a minute.
Headphones off, everyone.
So everyone shut your mouths. Okay, so when we were kind of discussing what this section would look like, I was asked what it was like to have the longest running character and kind of my thoughts on that. So essentially, it kind of, I guess like looking at Tulok and the death of Tulok, it was my first big character death. Freeman was super happy about it. And honestly, I think that I wasn't so sad to have lost a character. I think that's an important part of telling the story, is your character failing as much as them succeeding. So I think that what just really bummed me out about it was that he didn't die in necessarily such like a heroic way. But what I hope kind of came across to the listeners was just how deadly the Gauntlet is, how deadly the Abomination Vaults are, because there's just the things that you see around every corner and the things that you run into all the time, like we've just been talking about, just are getting progressively more horrifying, more dangerous. And I just hope that his death might have put that vibe out there, that like nothing is sacred and everything can be taken away from you at any second. Okay, so that's number one. Second thing, I know that in some situations I railroaded the party by driving the story constantly back to the Gauntlet. And I do feel bad because I like to think that most of the time I'm a yes and type of player, but I do feel like in this situation, I was kind of driving and railroading us back. But I truly think that's because that's exactly what Tulok would have done. And I was really looking to kind of have this arc of him getting more and more out of control and moving towards a psychological rock bottom, as well as, as a figuratively and literally moved to the rock bottom of the Abomination Vaults.
Do you feel like when do you feel like you started thinking that way? Because at the beginning, we all knew anyone could die at any time. We learned that pretty quick with Samal. So there was no assumption for a while, I think, that Tulok was going to continue surviving. You played very cautiously, but it doesn't mean you were invincible, right? Mm-hmm. So at what point do you think you decided, okay, it really looks like Tulok needs to have like this arc. That's this personal arc, and he needs to keep pressing forward. He needs to kind of start losing control. When do you think that happened?
I think that it slowly started to happen probably around the time of Physic and Gilda's deaths. I think that Physic was kind of the beginning of it, and then Gilda was when it started to hit stride. And then clearly the moment of Izori's death, when Tulok is essentially just inconsolable and was digging in the rubble, and just digging until his hands were bleeding and wouldn't stop to talk to anyone. And I was just really trying to drive home in that moment, just how far things had gone psychologically for him. And then kind of just to round out my little rant here, after Tulok's death, I did have a hard time moving on from this character idea. I really wanted Tulok, obviously, to live to the end, because I just had such high hopes of the story arc that would have come from that, and also just what Freeman had been building, especially in episode 100, of the background of the Delarice family. So Freeman and I, behind the scenes, had a couple conversations about, well, what if Tulok comes back as a ghost? What if one of Tulok's extended family come in looking for him, and then maybe they're sorcerers too, or just something along those lines. And in the end, I personally couldn't find a way to do it without making it feel corny. And so that's when I went in a different direction with Harold, and I am very happy about that. So that's my rant. Tulok, peace out, big ups, miss you, bro.
I feel that so hard. It's so hard to give up on some PCs, and the idea, like Gilda was started out as like a pale reflection of Samal, you know, even the same archetype, just because giving up that idea is very, very challenging when you don't feel like you've had enough time to really explore the character, which, you know, is probably always the case in the TTRPG scenario. But I want to be clear that you did an amazing job, and Harold to me was a hard pivot from Tulok, and I think you just nailed it.
Yeah, Harold was a great refresher. Yeah. And on the topic of like, when Scott and I talked about some behind the scenes options, like the distant family member, he rejected that pretty quickly, and that was the moment I knew I was going to make his sister Good Sparrow. It's like immediately I was like, okay, he doesn't want to bring his own family in. I'm doing his family then. And then
the old GM Fiat.
Yeah, the ghost thing. I remember, Scott, you were very like trepidatious. You were like, I don't want to do something that seems so on the nose. You didn't want to like just repeat the same character and just do the obvious thing. But I tried pretty hard to convince you, because to me, I thought like it doesn't have to be the next character, but like, you know, in the roster, in the reservoir, you know, the backups, I thought it'd be really cool to have yet one more ghost that is bound to finish their goal, bound to the vaults. You have Otari, you have Belcoria, and you have a PC. To me, I think that trifecta would have been really, really neat.
Yeah,
up to the point where I had convinced Scott more or less to get ready in case Harold did die in the last fight. And maybe we use that.
If Harold had died leading up to like the final episodes, I would have been considering it a lot harder. All right, y'all. Back to the questions here. Okay, so a little bit more generic questions for you here, Freeman. What did you love about this book?
But this book in particular, yeah, I mean, I love the massive expansiveness of like 2 of the 3 levels. So like the farm and the hunting grounds. I think they're huge, but they're not necessarily longer to navigate. Arguably, the farm was shorter in some ways, I think. I just kind of love that. The last level is like honed in, cramped back to the halls and rooms, but like also it's not Belcora's design. So like this whole book, like that kind of like jumping into the large spaces was like a breath of fresh air in pacing, as it were, no matter how stagnant the air actually was, probably for the PCs. To me, it was a breath of fresh air to like have like this open space, and then to get back into the cramped like specific area. I think that was just a really, really cool kind of transition. So that prison to farm and hunting grounds, like, is this big like spreading your wings moment, and then you get back to what you've known for so long, and it's the final stretch. I think that's a really cool way of designing this book. That's the thing that really stands out to me.
Yeah, viewers are probably, or listeners, were probably excited to not have to listen to us say, I check for traps.
Another 5 foot high. I check for traps. Another 5 foot high.
I listen behind the door.
Yeah. They were still listening behind the doors, let's be honest, but there were just fewer doors. Yeah. What, if anything, did you write out of the book? I mean, those wisp encounters I mentioned earlier, for sure. There's a couple other encounters I changed, but I know there's a question a little later on I think I made a note on, so I'll save some of that. But I did write out an event, I guess, in which War Chief Kerfell is actually meant to hunt you down. So if you actually trigger the camp and you go on the run, which I thought you would do, you did, but I thought it would be different. He basically personally goes out with a small retinue and tries to track you down and surprise you. And I nearly did it. It was going to be in the resting place that I had revealed to you when Ruff like fell over with his armor destroyed after the Sholm, the giant naked mole rat encounter. Mm-hmm. In that little space, I was going to have them jump you. I wanted to give you a safe space and then scare you. But I don't know. I was actually working on the Belcora encounter at the time, and I decided to keep him in my back pocket and just kind of remove the possible event.
So, in the initial fight with War Chief Kerfell, is there a scenario where you fight him 4-on-1?
No. Originally, you fight him with 2 other Erdefon. I forget what they're tormentors, I think they're called. But they're the ones that can cast harm spells. So they basically stand back and keep healing him, more or less, or like just aiding him as he tries to take you down. So it's not a 4-on-1. He has a couple cohorts there. It's a tough encounter, but it's definitely more doable than what you ended up going through.
I thought that the whole Erdefon fight was pretty fucking cool, actually. I'd never really been a part of just such a brawl that had so many NPCs and so many PCs fighting all at the same time. What was it like in preparation for that? Were you excited? Were you stressed?
It was pretty daunting, but like the stat blocks, they're all like when you get into an encounter like that, you're fighting a lot of lower level creatures, right? So the stat blocks are reasonably simple to look over. The thing that was probably the most difficult to that was trying to just get through the rounds. It probably would have been better if I had like troop stat blocks to work with instead of like a whole bunch of individuals. Probably would have made it smoother. But I remember just trying to keep on top of like move to the next turn. Like try not to get those rolls in, get those 3 attacks in. Don't really slow down. So I don't know if the encounter in that episode ended up being very interesting to listen to or not. But I did my best to like expedite it without like, removing too much of the drama. I really enjoyed like things like, I was planning for those daemons, those big like hairy monkey daemon things that like fly over you and flank you. I did a lot of preparing for those sorts of things, like looking at the different stats and, the war cry that goes out that boosts everyone's damage, just by a smidgen. So it wasn't too hard to plan. It was okay.
Okay. Follow-up question for Cam. Of all the annoying things that I did in this game, do you think running headstrong into that room was the most annoying?
No. I was in. I regret to this day letting Ruff talking us into letting him 1v1 because I think that that was just the bad call. I regret, but no, I was excited. I was excited.
You could feel Cam like die early and turn over in their grave every time someone runs into a room. Everyone's so guilty of it. It's so funny.
I mean, Lump was definitely like kicking down their own share.
But like Nick in the Gogatath room, Harold in the Erdefon room, like Ruff in probably every other room.
Harold
separating.
Okay, I understand what you mean now. Just running into the room.
Yeah.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, getting away from your healer and tank.
Yeah.
Just I'm gonna go look over here.
Yeah.
That killed me every time. Please.
Harold again in the temple when there was that weird vine monster.
Oh yeah. Yep. So good. Makes things interesting, that's for sure.
We're having fun. But did you have any more on that? I think that
Oh yeah, I was writing out of the book. Yeah, just one other small thing really. You all know that I wrote the Adamantine Dragon in because it came from the remaster, but that involved writing out an original which was a black dragon. It just basically maintains and is proud of like the underground swamp that you discover in there. So I just basically wrote in that the Adamantine Dragon had found the lair, killed the black dragon, and took over because it had the advantage of just traveling through the stone. But there wasn't really much story there, so I didn't really think the black dragon was very special. So I did that. I wrote that out effectively so that I could have this dragon connected to Nick in there.
Do you fight the black dragon?
Potentially, yeah. It certainly isn't there to talk with you and. It's not looking for any favors per se, from what I recall, especially not in the way that I was connected to Nick. I think it has if I recall correctly, it's got a passing interest in the lenses that it's heard about. I think Belcor actually approached the dragon, and the dragon was like, "No, piss off." I'm actually struggling to remember now. I should have looked that up, but yeah, there was a little bit there, but it was mostly going to be a really difficult encounter with a treasure pile that actually isn't that good.
That was my next question.
Oh yeah, the OG treasure pile was like, it was mostly gold and I think I gave you everything in it, and then I added things for the adamantine dragon. So you got what was there, but anything that was extra good I gave you. I think other than that Spirit Blast scroll, which ended up not being of much use to you.
All right, nice. Okay, what is your favorite bit of GM improv from this book?
So that just goes right back to Kerfell, because him marching into the room was me improving. That was not part of the adventure. I wanted to punctuate the danger and how difficult everything was. So arguably that's an example of me beefing up an encounter, but the intention was, I thought I was gonna, you guys were having a hard time already. You were mostly surrounded. And I really wanted to enter the big chief with a really big group of Erdefon, and to make you turn on your heel and run, which you didn't do right away anyway. So I was actually, I think at that point was ready to do like a 4-on-1 or a 4-on-2 thing. That's kind of when he challenged you. That was my intent. When it went to a 1-on-1, I was thoroughly unprepared for that. I in a way I regret saying yes to that as well, just like Cam. It would have been better if we had like a skill challenge to do that, but I wasn't prepared for it. So that's a bit of improv that maybe seemed scripted, and it kind of bit us in the ass a little bit. But hey, we turned it into a cool scene that ended in a couple events that killed Lump. So I'm happy.
Well, there you go, listeners.
Giveth and taketh away.
Exactly.
Next time, Battle of the Bands Part 2.
Listeners, he was so smug that he sipped his beer with his pinky up after saying that about killing Lump.
Gotta stay classy, my friends.
PC deaths don't bother me. It's just, ooh, new character. Like,
yeah,
how am I going to make Freeman's life hell this time?
Yeah, new challenge unlocked.
I bullied Freeman enough with tripping in doorways, and no, you don't get to do anything. It's completely fair. There's no hard feelings.
I loved the brutality of Lump's death, to be honest. Like it was really sudden, and it was like you got torn apart. You were like this. Yeah, Lump was this amalgamation of flesh, and it got ripped apart. And I think there's something really visceral about that, and I love it.
A lot of people get ripped apart in that room.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it was the first character death we had that didn't result in a lot of like sad ceremony. Like we did, like, it didn't feel the same personal character weight. We did the whole, that's when I did the whole thing, like a march into town kind of thing, right? And like the town was a part of it.
Rough, yeah.
But it wasn't like a go sit in the room and sulk and like and be in disbelief. It was the first death. It was like, this is what the mission is,
Lump was really galvanizing.
Yeah, big time.
All right, let's carry on to, what is your favorite bit of player improv from this book? Stroke our egos.
I mean, every time we all manage to double down on some role play in town, and you do the round table. I mean, like, I don't have a one, I think I love when I had written scenes, like certain people had written scenes, we put them in. I've always wanted more. I've always pushed for more. But I do love those ones where we come in and we're not, we know we're going to go order some stuff from Absalom and we're going to do this round table. And sometimes it's very improv. Sometimes it's someone so goes up on the cliff and then someone goes, oh, can my character come join you? Yes, and you have this improv conversation. So those are always my favorite. So I mean, our third to last episode, 158, that last episode of like shopkeeping and getting ready to go into what felt like the final delve, which turned out to be the final delve. I think that whole series of things, like for this book in particular, was really top notch. It was really, poignant. And everyone doubled down on that really well. I mean, I got all emotional when I improv'd Debbie coming into the room with Arthur's lemon bars, you know? I thought I was going to get more emotional in the epilogue, but no, it was that moment for some reason. So it's like, I love when we all pile on as a group and get all those juices going, you know? I think those are the big ones.
That Debbie moment was kind of funny because I could see you start welling up, but we had a bit of a punchy vibe going on at that point, and everyone just kind of started making fun of something. And yeah. I felt like you were very emotional about it, and then everyone else was just kind of fucking about. And so
yeah it was good. Hey, no regrets. No, it's all good. Yeah, because no one knew where I was going, right? No one knew what I was going to do, and to me it was funny. It was fucking hilarious to bring Debbie in. Like I started laughing right away. But then I just got so emotional over Arthur because I also, at the time, I knew what the end result for Arthur was, right? No one did, but I did. So I think that's probably why it caught me. I was like, I knew what his epilogue was going to be.
It was a very, very sweet moment, in my opinion.
To the editors, cut fewer of my tears. I don't mind them being out there.
More tears.
If it didn't slow up the pacing so often.
30 minutes of uncontrollable sobbing is just too much.
Okay, what did we miss from this book that you were really hoping we'd find?
You know, I've said it before, you've all been quite thorough. You were technically less thorough in this book, but not by a large margin. There wasn't much that was missed, really, outside the Drought Outpost. Remember you went to Ildaris, and then you were shown the secret exit sort of south, and then there was a sort of mushroom field with some like riding lizards in it. I think I had them on the map there, but you opted not to go exploring in that area, or you
the
did.
Fog,
and you
right? Wasn't there the fog?
No,
there?
no, it was before the fog. There's actually like maybe did you find this? I don't think you did. There was like a webbing of equipment hidden, like tucked into a nook that you missed, and it had healing gloves greater and a cloak of elven kind and some cash. So it's pretty significant treasure. Yeah, and then the fog was shortly after that, and you opted not to go into it, which is a good idea in the end because there's no treasure. But it would have been a really cool fight because you fight like a level 12 daemon. That's like basically as scary as the Gogateth, but then you're also doing it inside of a demonic fog that like solidifies around you into tiny creatures that like bite at you. So it's pretty messed up fight. It would have been a really cool like thematic encounter that's really like kind of harrowing, but there's no reward for it. So you didn't like miss anything, but you certainly very smartly skipped something. There was also a secret door behind the giant skull in the room where you fought the Lady's Whisper before Belcora.
Ooh, I was pushing to search that area.
But it also kind of good you didn't just go there because it's crazy. It goes through like a little cavern or a little twisting tunnel into a cavern, and in the cavern there's like a pit that goes hundreds of feet deep. It actually says like deeper into the Darklands beyond the scope of the adventure kind of pit. So like something you definitely don't want to fall in. And there's like a corpse on the edge of the pit. And when you go check it, it's got like a 500 GP like piece of jewelry on it. But you find that the corpse is emptied and filled with rocks. And then when you jangle it, it acts as an alarm for a creature that climbs out of the pit. And it's like a level 13 like fucked up Darklands creature called an Urlgaunt. And yeah, there's not much reward for an incredible bit of danger. And I'm kind of glad you skipped it because, like, to me, it's kind of a cool encounter, but also the last thing you want before you're going to fight the last boss is just, like, unceremoniously lose, you know, one of your characters to a crazy strong creature that can just knock you down a pit that instantly kills you kind of thing. You know, it's... you don't want to write a new character at that point. It's not good for the show, you know?
Did you hear some horror stories on Reddit about that?
Nope. No, never heard anything on that one, actually. Not that I recall.
You know, it also brings up the kind of, in adventure paths, there is sometimes a point of no return where if you lose a PC, right at the end, you're like, can I make a new PC work here?
Right.
Or is one of my players literally just going to have to sit out the final boss fight? And how fucking shitty is that?
Yeah. Yeah, for real. Yeah, there's it's really tough. And I think it's in a way it's important to pull some punches there, or like, you know, you don't want to like explicitly give everyone plot armor at a certain point, you know. And like in this case, this adventure, you were never really locked in. You felt locked in when you got to the Lady's Whispers encounter, like for a bit when you were into the swamp, you fought Volok and you fought the swamp creature and then Lady's Whisper and all that stuff. And like you hadn't found an exit in a while for there. But I knew that you would, you know. Lady's Whisper was not really going to prove to be a hard enough encounter. You all were really anxious about it because of Cam's knowledge of death creatures,
Yeah,
which was really fun.
Like,
really added to the anxiety. Yeah, but yeah, not nearly as deadly as you all thought. So it's good. It's good that like you weren't really stuck there and were forced to go march into Velcora's room.
Yeah, it's not like we were on in Giant Slayer, the like the floating fortress in the last book. You know, really famously, it's just like, where the fuck do you pull another character from that right at the end? You know, it's like you can always do it, but it's gonna be probably cheesy in the end and just shitty.
Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah.
I do have a question though. If we had fought the Whisper Lady Death before, just immediately ganked her, fuck it, let's fight. Do we still get to do the trials, or do they still open? Or
if I recall correctly, basically she controls all of the doors like mentally to open and close. But I think that when she is killed, that they just open, are available to be opened. I think I just opened them for you as a way out. I can't remember if it's actually written here. I can't find it really quickly. But like ultimately, you could just press forward. You could batter down all those doors, you know, that don't have keys. You can still bang through them. Even the big like stone slab that next to where you had fought and defeated her, like that could have been battered down if you needed to. Like she was closing them and opening them and trapping you, but like it wasn't like there was no way out. You could have brute forced your way out if you out or in if you wanted.
Interesting.
Yeah. So technically, yeah, you could have skipped a lot of it if you really wanted to.
All right, let's get into some book specific questions here. So, on floor number H, which is the farm, we had that huge rolling combat. We've already discussed it. But that was a highlight for a lot of the players. But how do you feel about it? And also, it's a 3-point question. Were you ever nervous for the players? And is that why you brought the drow in? And I know you touched on that as well, but maybe get into it a little bit.
I think I was getting nervous at one point. But as I said before, like it wasn't like I didn't bring the drow in for any reason of nervousness. It was that moment when the Goliath Spire got activated with the huge nick. That was the point where I was like, oh, this is turning into more chaos than I bargained for. But again, with all the creatures sort of attacking indiscriminately, I didn't think it was going to be that big a deal. So I knew it could be deadly, but I didn't think it was going to be that deadly. And then I don't know, it just to me that I think if I was nervous ultimately for story reasons, it would have been something like all the drow end up dying, and then like you don't have this buffer for Eldaris now, and you suddenly don't know the goals of these drow. And you have nothing to go on. You might find the secret interest that they've walked you through, but if you do, what then? Like the only evidence you have of connection to the drow is that they're all dead, you know. And then maybe you end up fighting your way through Eldaris at that point. So that was the only thing crossing my mind, I think, around then. But otherwise, as I said before, wasn't too nervous about like TPK or anything.
And we would have found that creature tied up in the room. Yeah,
true enough.
Which we unceremoniously slaughtered anyways. Also an interesting story moment. That was pretty brutal. In the farm, during episode 125, Come Correct, in room H25, there was a Naga on the map, but that's not how the fight played out. Can you tell us about your decision to pivot to a Rakshasa? And just for the listeners, Freeman opened up the foundry for all of us to kind of take a look through after we had completed the game.
Yeah, so that's how this question came around. Like, where the fuck was that Naga? I didn't at all like what was written in there. It was really like, to me, just it wasn't something I felt like I could get it properly across. Basically, there is a Naga in there. The Naga was appointed personally by Belcorra to get the children of Belcorra back to work in kind of like getting the farm more operational again, and for her future plans. But basically, Belcorra chose poorly. The children of Belcorra have become listless in their undead state, so they weren't very motivated. And the Naga is just written as lazy. So the Naga's not motivated to motivate the children of Belcorra. So she's just sort of hanging out, enjoying the fact that they have to listen to what she says, but they're not really working very hard. And that's about it. So I didn't find that to be, it didn't look like it was going to be a very interesting encounter. I didn't find that to be a very interesting bit of story, and I wasn't really sure how I would even portray it. What was the Naga going to say? Oh, she chose poorly. I'm a lazy bastard. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So what I did was I pivoted to the Rakshasa just because I thought, one, Rakshasas are cool, and two, it was a good way to like kind of fuck with your brains a little bit and make you think Yusan Kalir come back somehow because the Rakshasa had transformed. And I didn't really write much story for the Rakshasa at that point. I just thought, I'm going to fill this combat out. And make it kind of interesting in this way. The thing that stands out the most to me is that you fought a Dread Wraith at the same time. That Dread Wraith was always there. You might remember that when just before Tulok died, when you get on the shore, there was some debate of what you had all agreed on. Like, I think it was you, Scott, that had said, "Oh, I thought we were going to the dock." And then, but oh no, everyone was like, "Oh no, I thought we were going to the shore." But you conceded and were like, "Oh, I guess we're just on the shore then." But that Dread Wraith would have been activated had you gone to the dock. So I'd saved it, and I thought I'll mix this Rakshasa and this Dread Wraith together, and I'll let you get in there a little bit further first, and I'll get you kind of surrounded by these two things, just to make an interesting encounter. But that's pretty much it.
Very cool. Everyone just likes to say Rakshasa.
Right? So good.
And yeah, the issue on the boat was I misheard or misunderstood what Cam said and thought that we were protecting our backs by going further as opposed to protecting our backs by going onto
the that's
dock.
right. Oh, that rings a bell now. Yeah.
So you know what? Better communication is the name of the game.
Yeah. Might have your character survive. Maybe.
Yeah. Ask questions. Clarify. Don't assume. Okay. Let's carry on to the next question here. So, level I, hunting grounds, felt massive. There had to be something here that we missed, right?
So like I said earlier, not really. Like, to me, this brings to mind like the sort of the design of the level is really cool because it's big, expansive, but it's still not slower to sort of navigate, and it doesn't really do like the whole, I don't know what it sprung to mind, but it's like the whole Viridian Forest, like the first Pokemon, when you get into that, I think it's the Viridian Forest, you get in there and there's secret items hidden in the grass if you just click around. Like, there was none of that kind of built in, like these mushroom fields and patches. There's no like small thing to find, and I'm kind of glad there wasn't. It would have been kind of a hard thing to keep track of in a way, and it would have forced like the necessary like searching and investigating checks like every time you entered a large expanse of space or like a mushroom forest. In retrospect, I think that would not have been interesting. So I like that the design was not there for that, and so that resulted in you barely missing anything, which I think is good design.
Mm-hmm. Continuing along with the hunting grounds, we had more questions about the Erdefon camp. Obviously, I went a little off script earlier and asked you some further questions, but is there anything that we haven't discussed about this location, because we never really got to go back and actually search it.
Yeah, that's true. There actually isn't much there, especially not like reward wise. It's all equipment from the things you kill, basically. There is one room that is basically dedicated to the Erdefon just like self-cutting and bloodletting in their spare time, quite literally. And that's why there's an Erdefon blood mage in there as well. That was part of that that duel encounter, who's quite deadly. But there is another room where they do blood sacrifices to summon the daemons that they had summoned and bound to them. So the daemons that you fought in that big fight. So that was part of it. And in that room, there is a deep gnome called Calanth Naragblam, who has been captured and is about to be sacrificed when you arrive. So you can save this deep gnome. And that deep gnome's original story was something, I think it's something like they were trying to find their distant kin and then found that they were the children of Belcora and transformed, and then quite sadly leaving, and then was captured. But that's about it. I had actually changed the story in anticipation of you all arriving there, and I made him like Glash's grandson looking for his grandfather, and got caught. Which is why this deep gnome got a small nod in the epilogue episode, because I had written that in, but it was like kind of the one thing you didn't discover in that area. The only other thing that really comes to mind is that like you are meant to go to Kerfel's sort of main tent to find him, and you fight him there, and that's where you're meant to get the Emerald Lens in that moment. And I actually originally had an idea where Volok is there, trying to gain connection to Belcora through Kerfel. And so it would have been a kind of mimicking the post-Jafiki thing where you fought Jafiki and then suddenly Volok's there to like mop up and fuck you up again. But ultimately, I decided not to do it, especially when the rough duel thing went down. That kind of all went out the window.
Okay. So that's everything for the Erdefon. Calanth.
Yeah.
Other deep gnome. Also a dancer?
I could have been, yeah. There was something written in there, I think, where like if you save Calanth, he finds a way to like send you a high quality Dark Chase game board. That like you might remember that was like you found some leftover pieces for the game when you killed the children of Belcora. Mm-hmm. He sends you like a full set, and he does it like through like the caravans for the drow. He somehow gets it to you, and it's worth a bunch of gold or something.
Very cool. So, continuing on with the hunting grounds here. James has in his notes that he didn't feel like we fully explored Ildaris either. Anything that you want to get into about that map or community?
Yeah, you definitely didn't. There wasn't a lot there. It's a lot of like, here's a training room, here's an equipment room, here's a mess hall. Here's like a room that you hang out in. Here's a bunch of personal quarters. There was one like really strange room that's like basically a cave made of like glowing ruby crystal. But it's basically where the twins, those strange drow twins, like meditate. And there's nothing of like significance around it really that's written in. If you were to have like fought your way through Ildaris, like mostly you would just get the equipment, some poisons. I think there was an oil of keen edge somewhere, a talisman somewhere, some cash, some valuables to sell. Like, it's really just standard stuff. Salesa on her big sword had a corrosive rune, which you could have grabbed. The twins had like level 1 manifold missile wands each, so you could have had 2 more of those. And then in Cora's room, she in her like sort of personal chest, she had a set of boots and Cloak of Elvenkind. So as far as I remember, the adventure supplies you with a double set of that technically, but it's unlikely you'll acquire it. But that's pretty much it. It's basically, it is an outpost. It's there's lots of rooms, but it's quite simple, and there's not much to find or explore. Not unless we spent a lot of time like with all of you getting to know the drow on more personal levels and hanging out and kind of spending time in the mess hall or something like that. So, but it never really ended up being that hub.
Fair enough. And the twins, speaking of,
yeah.
Did you make up that they talk like that, or was that written in the book?
No, that's written in the book. Yeah. I wrote their lines, or I took what lines were there and added more to them, I think, mostly. But yeah, they're meant to like, actually, I think I did change it a little bit. Technically, I think they were meant to just, one was meant to be speaking, but both mouths were moving. And it was hard to discern which one was speaking as a result. I think I did play with that a bit, but we did the sort of like left-right effect on the audio. And then I always like we punctuated those final lines spoken at the same time, which was just a fun little effect to play with, really.
Very cool. Okay, next question is for James. James, how do you feel about ending the game with 2 feather swan boat. I don't know. Feather swan boat tokens is what I'm going with. I can't remember exactly what they're called.
Oh my goodness.
Better 2 than 1, I guess.
Oh my God.
Level J, which is the temple. James mentioned in one of the last episodes that he thought we had failed the last test in the memories room. Was that the case, or was the Lady's Whisper always going to fight us in the final room?
The Lady's Whisper clocks you immediately and has never intends for you to reach Belcora. Always was going to attack you. That's why the first thing you do is go into the room with the bottomless pit, and if you pass that test, you come out, and then you're meant to move on down to the temple. But like the Lady's Whisper is meant to sort of like see something in you and decide whether or not you're still worthy. Actually, so I think if I recall correctly, what the ritual is you come in and you're either sent to a room where you're not worthy immediately, or you're sent to a test. And that's like the sort of the first 2 rooms that you were pointed towards. But she clocks you immediately, knows you're against Belcora, knows you're not going to be worthy of, she wants you to be a Nimbleoth worshiper. She knows you're not going to be right out of the gate. So she sends you on the test hoping you die. Then she sends you to the room of failure hoping you'll be killed by the Dreadwisp. And then her plan is to just whittle you down. And then if you manage to make it again, strike you while you're down. That's it. And there was I think it was great that Cam was so kind of like on edge about being related to deaths. And then when I brought Sequishu back in that room with the wisps, and I kind of added that element of, these wisps don't approve of Belcora. They don't consider her to be a proper worshiper of Nimbleoth. She sees Nimbleoth as a tool. And so they were like kind of ready to just give you a free pass. I wrote that in, and I kind of wanted it to set in your subconscious a bit, maybe the Lady's Whisper had the same attitude, that you were going through all these motions because the Lady's Whisper was like, maybe you're the ones to oust this thing, but it never really speaks to you up until the end. So I wasn't sure if I succeeded in that or not, but I wanted her sort of silent attitude to keep you on edge, but you think maybe if we prove ourselves, we'll get to keep going. But behind the scenes, not the case, not with the Lady's Whisper.
Very cool. Any bigger plans for the dragon that didn't make it into the story?
Not really. I had made, I killed the black dragon, basically. I added those mud wings in there as a result, as an opportunity, because I knew we weren't investing in too many fly spells at that point. So I wanted to create that opportunity. I had no real... I pretty much knew, I think, close to the end that when you do defeat Belcora, that with the collapse of the gauntlet, that I was going to have that dragon kind of resurrect to be part of that montage of destruction. But as far as like dragons go, yeah, like the adamantine dragon was really a great way to just like anchor Nick into what Duncan had created. And what we had kind of worked on together. The Stone Scale kobolds were never meant to be part of the adventure. That was a part of the history of Atari, and certainly part of the beginner box, that you kind of encounter them. But I wanted a little bit more, like Nick was there to kind of discover, his kin and maybe this master, and kind of does both. And then I loved how that turned out. Like we didn't really go down a crazy storyline, but we had this constant private anxiety happening with Nick, and Dunk always knocked it out of the park. I think when we put him on the spot of how Nick's feeling with this, every time it was prompted, I found it to be quite interesting. So, and at the same time, it was like right around the time the remaster was coming out, right? So I was straight up, finding a way to like replace this dragon at the time. I think Monster Core came out like shortly before I actually introduced the adamantine dragon for the first time. So. It was all quite timely. But there was no grand plan. We were kind of flying free on that one.
Dunk, was there anywhere that you wanted to go with that you didn't end up going? Because I know you were kind of steering Nick in a direction where, the dragon wasn't what he thought it was. And he had some good scenes with the, what's the leader of the kobolds called?
The Adamant.
The Adamant. Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to kind of get into in that, Nick, or Nick, Dunk, that you want Nick to get into, Dunk, or?
Just fully to be honest about my writing of Nick, the episode where Krucka got neverminded was 2 or 3 days before I moved out of my apartment to drive across the country. So I didn't put the work in that I wanted to. So I was discovering a lot as we went. And I was kind of like a little happy with how it came out, feeling a bit wishy-washy because he kind of like it. I think it played into the conflict a bit. So I don't know if I would be happier giving it any more of a resolution than it had, because I kind of liked leaving it as we did, where like there was an arc, like there wasn't a huge heroic ending, but there was kind of like an uneasy ending for him, some kind of a resolution, but leaving it hanging just kind of like, I think it feels a little better than fully resolving something.
Yeah. I feel the same way. Like I loved the wishy-washy-ness of it, and it's I like what you said there. It's like you were learning as you go, and that is like one of those elements that like especially new players in these games. People get really into it. They go whole hog and they create massive backstories. I'm incredibly guilty of it. You can ask James. Like I was half writing the story at some point, and I was putting too much in. And there's a certain point where you had to go. No, some about my character I don't know yet. I have to learn that as I go. Now, I mean, and in the case of Nick, it was like most of that character, but that's it's not really that bad of a thing when life's very much in the way. And I am too. I'm very pleased with how kind of loose and vague that whole thing kind of is, and will always remain. I think it's kind of fun.
Yeah, so it's easy to like say that your character needs to have these motivations and start from there for going, but like especially where you're dropping in the middle of the adventure, having the adventure as like the core motivation and kind of building outward from there. I'd like to do a lot more homework on the next character that I build,
yeah, sure.
and fully plan to, but it is an interesting and kind of fun way to flesh out,
It's also a classic trope, discovering the character, the quest of self-discovery. It's good storytelling.
Yeah, hero's call, denial of the call, comes back and fights the dragon.
Yeah. Like the just like take Harold for example. I always loved the kind of measuring this idea in rolling a esoteric lore on the Gogateth, and then like having that like sort of improv idea of like how Harold had heard of one of these creatures before in the Mwangi Expanse, and how terrifying that is, and like that's an example of the mechanics telling you don't know everything about your character. You are now learning that Harold once heard this story. And like to me that's really cool, and you could take that farther than just hitting the DC on a roll. Like you can go a little bit further with that and just kind of make decisions as you go. A lot of your character ought to be, in my opinion, and that's how you achieve like growth and arcs, by kind of discovering on the way.
And it especially works with Nick, because Nick was discovering himself as much as you were discovering what he was like too, because that was his whole arc, was just kind of his own exploration of who he truly is.
Yeah, he was always putting on a facade and didn't really have like a proper sense of identity, and then was suddenly caught in the middle of like being in charge of the identity of all these kobolds too, right?
Well, Nick grew up. He's got scales where there weren't scales before.
Yeah, and you did a great job of making it feel written and preordained and organic. The whole journey was excellent.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Hell yeah.
Okay, let's get this back on track here. Freeman, you mentioned being disappointed in missing some of the story elements along the way. For instance, the Motley Man. Are there any story beats that you wish the players had spent more time on?
It's a tough one. I think the thing that really comes to mind, since you mentioned the Motley Man, is like how much I wasn't happy with like the arc with Doriana. There's not much written in the adventure for it, so it's kind of like the onus is on us, and probably more importantly me, to kind of put that through. But there was this, I think one of the things that caught us up over this whole adventure was the consistency and the ebb and flow of returning to town. At some point, early on, you were constantly going back to visit Rin. And at some point, you just stopped. You just stopped even talking about her. And she was left, to her own devices. And there was a similar thing there. Like, it makes me think like it would have been, once you found out there was this weird thing with Doriana, it would have been nice to go back and check in on her. And then give Osif an update or lack thereof of your progress. But every time you did return town, there was there was a laundry list of things to do. You wanted to talk to certain people, do research, order some goods, rest up for the night, go have a moment alone, and you couldn't really fit them all in every time. And then you factor the fact that we're recording this and like it could be weeks, months even since the last time we've been in town, like in real world time, right? So it's easy to forget that maybe your character is interested in checking up on Doriana. So that's what I wish more had happened. If I were to say, I wish the players had done more of checking in on certain things like that. But also, I don't think it's really anyone's fault. It's like the style of our production, the mood of the adventure, and the fact that Scott took all the blame for pressing forward. Thank you, Scott. I think it's Scott's fault.
I'll take it.
Lost that. So, yeah.
All right. So after the whole AP leading up to it, how did the Belcora fight feel? And did the players do what you thought they would do in the fight?
Not exactly. I think the fight was cool. I think it was fun. I think I'm happy that I didn't use the wisps. I tried to really, really gun into your heads that you need to use those lenses on Belcora. That's how you win this. You have to use them on her. Get it done. And you kind of didn't do it until the very end. And that's the part I still don't really understand. It's the thing I expected you to do. It's the thing I tried to drive home. And honestly, it's kind of, in a way, it's a miracle that critical success from Barrel Swing at the end. Like I hope that never feels scripted. That was so legit. I couldn't believe it. It gave me the perfect excuse to just like inject all those essences in at once and like avoid a TPK and get into like an awesome montage and victory. So I love how the dice allowed that opening for me. But like I'm still a little bit confused as to why you didn't get in there and start swinging at her. I know Kerfell was a danger. The other Erdefon was a danger, but like, I know it's sometimes you need to take down the adjacent mob to the boss before you attack the boss. It's kind of like a MMO concept. But like, yeah, like, that fight could have ended so much faster if you had gone in there and successfully swung like 4 times or something, on her. It would have been done. That's sort of how that encounter is built. So did it go the way I thought? No. Was it incredibly dangerous the way I hoped? Yes. Do I understand how it all, what everyone's decisions were? Definitely not. But I think it still turned out to be something really cool. Like I thought you would have just hampered Kerfell to aim at your goal, but that's not the way it went.
Yeah, it seemed fast to me. Like maybe I blacked out, but like it did seem fast.
You just can't end on an uneven 159. That doesn't feel right.
Yeah, that's it. I just can't do it. Yeah, it wasn't like the longest encounter, that's for sure. But it was over 2 episodes. But
yep.
The 159 was a lot of build up towards the encounter actually starting. So you're not wrong. It wasn't like a crazy long fight, but it definitely could have been faster.
If I may, the reason that we didn't get in there and just start swinging was because first, there wasn't a whole lot of prep, and second, there was just a lot of, at least for Barrel, holding the lantern. That was the first mistake, because my action economy was just heal. I was doing the most. I was doing a lot. All my actions were being taken. I did not have the, Bikor is starting to fly. I have to spend 2 actions to bring her back down to the ground. There was no point where Beryl was like, I can run in here and just swing with this. It just did not make any sort of sense. I think that, that was like a big part of it. All my actions were going towards getting people ready to go back into the fight.
Yeah, because there was a logic applied to having that fulcrum lattice into Beryl's hands, but once you got in there, it was like, shit, this seems like the wrong hand to be in right now. But I think what would have been interesting is had you say given it to Ruff or Nick or I guess even Harold, and like they had to fly on them and they were going in gunning, like when you start that would have used like the larger space of the room, because she could have been started flying away and stuff, right? But that's where the fight would have got really crazy, because when you pass over the rivulets in that room that are all around the center that kind of spread out, you had to make saves, and the more you pass in a single like turn, the higher the DC, and then you become doomed. That accumulates. So it's like every time you're crossing over this, you're risking like going closer and closer to death. So if the full space of the room was used more, it would have been like shit. Like, we got to take her down now. You got to keep gunning for it. But it didn't really, because you guys stuck to one side of the room mostly, and had a lot of like her needing to kind of come to you or make sure you were in range to do something. That's
kind of what I was aiming for, getting her to come to us instead of like running into her. Engaging her on her own home turf on her own terms seemed like a very bad idea.
Yeah.
Cam.
I mean, it's a bad strategy in general. Yeah. Yeah.
Just let me run in here into the Bisque Valley and swing my little lantern at hers.
Yeah.
I thought you loved people running right in and swinging.
I think that I've made it abundantly clear that I do not love that.
No, I don't listen to the show.
That's what I did.
No, first I've heard of it. I thought I could have swore Cam loved that.
All right. Now, are there any character backstory moments that you didn't get to, or any story elements that you feel the players didn't wrap up?
I don't think so. I mean, I made sure everyone had something for the epilogue. I made sure there was as much wrapping up as possible, even if it's vague wrapping up. At least it was commented on. It was mentioned somewhere. I don't think anything was missed. And ultimately, like, what do I think the players didn't wrap up for themselves? I don't really feel like I'm in the position to say that. It's your characters. You need to wrap them up. I need to make sure you wrap them up. But like, did you miss the parts that I think should have been there? I don't think that's my position to do that, to say. I think, like, if there's anything that's like doesn't feel wrapped up, it's because I threw it in for my own flavor's sake. The thing with the half-kin, and which were once the half-brothers, which was part of Aylin's original crew, like how I changed that, and Good Sparrow's role. Was all really intended to be kind of vague and on the periphery, and be kind of just part of making the world feel a bit organic. And like, there's still always things more going on than just you diving into the vaults. So I think, and like, taking the episode 100 and all the time bending, like I did as much work as I could to make it like, consistent and like legitimate, air quotes. But also it's time bending. Like, you have lots of freedom to just say, that's how it works. Doesn't have to make sense. So I think I'm pretty happy with the wrap up all in all. I don't think if there's something that is missing, and I find out later, it's going to bother me a lot, I think.
It's too late now, baby.
Yeah.
So I know that our next episode is going to be a mailbag episode, so I don't want to ask any questions of like end of game things, and looking back on it. But like, did you have any shower thoughts and like really weird ideas or something out there that you decided not to do that you either wish you had done or just want to talk about real quick?
I had so many like way down the line ideas that I knew would never come to fruition. I'll give you one that I always thought would be the coolest thing in the fucking world, but was never going to happen. And it was Gilda falling into the bottomless pit in the first test. And then James having a new character, that character dying before Belcora or during the Belcora fight. And then Gilda spend all the time falling in a bottomless pit praying. And then like is like the deity just makes her fall into Belcora's room and just like join the fight. It's like this insane superhero moment of like the god finally answering the prayer at the right time, and she's just been patiently like praying while falling for eternity kind of shit. I used to come up with that shit all the time in the shower or wherever.
Would have been way better than what actually happened.
It would have been so cinematic and stuff, right? But like I was thinking about that, while Gilda was still alive, of course, like this is a long time ago. So it was just never gonna happen. I loved things like Dunk and I had some loose plans if Nick died. We were going to I was gonna find a way for all of you to bring Nick's body and Krucka to the Adamantine Dragon. And I was going to give the Adamantine Dragon some like impossible power to basically combine them, because Krucka was already a
Dragon Instinct.
Dragon Instinct barbarian, thank you. And actually that reminds me, I forgot about this. Before I replaced the Adamantine Dragon, but also including when I did, if Krucka had survived, I was going to make an offer to Krucka to change their instinct and worship the dragon and like turn them into like the adamantine instead of like the brass I think you had chosen originally. So there was that, and we had a loose plan of like Krucka coming back and having his mind cured, but basically combining the builds of Nick and Krucka. So he was going to go barbarian with fighter archetype or something like that, or the opposite. And then it was like up to Dunk, which body does he come back in? Like which personality is, but like a definite mix of the two kind of thing.
So it would have been like that movie Poor Things with Emma Stone, where they put people's brains into other people's bodies.
Oh my god!
I just
fucking
straight couldn't figure out. I mean, Yorgos Lanthimos movies are all great, but yeah, I just couldn't figure out what would be funnier, Nick and Krucka or Krucka and Nick. But they'd both be great.
Yeah, we bounced around on that. It would have been really fun, but yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's countless of those. I'm sure I've forgotten so many at this point, but I'm sure I'll be spurred on in the next episode. I hope I will be anyway.
So listeners, that comes to the end of our series of book wrap-ups behind the scenes here. We do have a mailbag episode coming up next week, but if you want to see some of these fucking weird ideas that Freeman keeps coming up with, these beautiful, beautiful ideas, you're just going to have to check us out in our next AP, our next project.
I think the fact that I didn't get to do the Gilda thing might have subconsciously been the inspiration for what I did with Raphael in the Gauntlet, like Void Energy.
Oh,
smart. It sounded similar.
Indeed.
But in the meantime, peace.
Stemming the Tide is an actual play podcast of the Adventure Path Abomination Vaults and is produced by the Uncharted North Network. Stemming the Tide uses trademarks and/or copyrights owned by Paizo Inc., used under Paizo's community use policy. We are expressly prohibited from charging you to use or access this content. Stemming the Tide is not published, endorsed, or specifically approved by Paizo. For more information about Paizo Inc. and Paizo products, visit paizo.com. Music is composed by Will Savino and artwork by Greyhood. Stemming the Tide is recorded remotely using Foundry Virtual Tabletop. If you wish to connect with us or support this project and projects to come, we can be found at unchartednorth.ca, patreon.com/unchartednorth, and on all major social media platforms. Links to all credits can be found in the episode description and our website. Thanks for tuning in.